Good, then welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here physically and also to the ones that are joining us online. Fintech Week Vienna, Fintech Ladies. It's the fourth time that we're joining really this event series because we really think the ecosystem around fintech, around diversity and inclusion, and also around business topics such as RegTech that we chose for this year has to be fostered. So why Fintech Ladies? It's an international network where we're basically fostering diversity and inclusion topics. We're also connecting women and men alike to bring them together. We are also bringing forward role models. 3 of them you will see today from the different business areas to really foster fintech, diversity, and also new innovation topics. So today, we have also a few partners with us. From one of them, Alexander, you will hear in a second. The topic is RegTech coming of age. You will be hearing from 3 different areas. One is really RegTech and fintech from company. The other one is banking, legal tech. And the third one is from the FMA, regulatory view, subtech. So different viewpoints that we will be discussing today. I hope you are interested, will enjoy the different discussions we will be having. And Alexander, let me thank you for joining us. And I hand over so that you can explain a bit why are we here? What is this FinTech Week even about?
Yes, first of all, thank you as well. We're really proud that the Fintech Ladies are part of the Fintech Week, I think, for the at least second or third time.
Fourth even, yes.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Even for the fourth time. And yes, my name is Alexander from the Vienna Business Agency, and together with my colleague Kerstin Hubner and Stefan Punkel from the Bankenverband, as well as Fintech Austria, we are organizing the Fintech Week for the 5th time already this year. I think the first time hybridly. Last year was, I think, just purely online due to the pandemic, unfortunately. And like every year, we're trying to cover really the whole fintech sphere. So this year we had also blockchain.
Technicalities
Yeah.
over there, yeah?
Okay. Should I repeat some things? Well, okay. Yes, so we are glad that we are hosting many events and topics. We're covering many topics this year. We started last Friday already with the blockchain, sustainable blockchain hackathon. We had events like the future of banking, obviously, the tech and fintech aspect. Green finance was also a topic again. Regulatory topics like today in RegTech in general, always really important. Corporate startups and crypto obviously was a big topic this year. So, like I said, we're also part of Vienna Up, which is the biggest decentralized startup festival. So the whole FinTech Week is part of that. So in parallel, we also have events like the Smart City Summit or the Creative Days running right now. So also please make sure to grab a wristband for everyone who's here. So there's a benefit for also coming in person. With these wristbands, you can get free Viennese wine and free Viennese coffee at Karlsplatz in front of the Karlskirche. So make sure to go there after the event. It's until Friday, I think. And we are really proud to show you this new FinTech report again. Like every 2 years, we're trying to update it and show what's going on in Vienna, showing the whole ecosystem, covering the hot topics around FinTech. And yes, please grab a copy. It's online as well. And yes, thank you from my side. Enjoy it. Back to you, Natalie.
Thank you, Alexander. So we heard from one of our partners today, Vienna Business Agency. We have 2 more companies that you'll be hearing from, and then also the Austrian Bankers Association, and together hosting this event today. 2 housekeeping information. So we're streaming today. We hope we have all of your consent that you're also part of this event. And the second one is we have Slido. So I hope my colleague will in a second pull up also the code. But basically all the Q&As that you will be asking today, you can put them into Slido and ask your questions so that we can also bring in your voices, both you here, but then also the ones joining us online. So my technical colleagues, I hope, will also bring the code up for you. Then you can type in your questions. And next one that I want to bring here on my stage is Johanna Maria Leiner, my co-ambassador. Johanna, please join me. So Johanna, together we're doing the Fintech Ladies here in Vienna, and like I told you, there's different hubs. So there is the Berlin hub, there's Germany, there's Austria, there is Belgium, also Switzerland. Johanna will guide you through the whole agenda, will explain what we'll be doing today, and also will help us with gathering some Q&A. So thank you, Johanna, and we will hear from each other later.
Thank you, Natalie. Very welcome, everybody. My name is Johanna Maria Leiner. I'm one of the ambassadors for the Fintech Ladies in Vienna. In the real world, I'm Vice President Compliance, Governance and Ethics. So coming from the compliance side, RegTech is something I'm interested in, and I'm really glad we chose this topic. And we have 3 amazing speakers today showing us the different sides of RegTech. We will start with our 3 speakers. Each and every one has prepared in their special topic presentation, and afterwards we will do a little Q&A. I will walk around with my phone, just that if you're wondering, because I will look live at Slido. If our audience online have some questions, so we will go that through. And afterwards, after we have done the presentation, there will be a panel. So all speakers will again come up on stage, and you have the chance to again ask questions on Slido. And for those in the room, we also have a networking event afterwards. So if you have questions, and if there are questions which have not been answered, all our speakers will be staying for a while. Just grab them, ask the questions, and let's have a good conversation about RegTech. Okay, so let's get it started. Our first speaker, we're going to, as Natalie said, we're going to the FinTech RegTech area. And it's about the RegTech journey. How did we get here? And where are we going? So big question from a company. It's Johanna Konrad. She is a Chief Operating Officer from company with a K, a Moody's Analytics company. Johanna has a huge experience, 15 years, has been working in Vodafone, Ericsson, A1 Group, and she is scaling businesses. She is responsible for global growth and the development of the company and of the company RegTech stream. So very welcome, Johanna Konrad. It's great to have you here, and let's get it started with the presentation.
Thank you. I think I might need this little thing. Thank you very much for the introduction, Johanna number 1. I'm Johanna number 2. And as Johanna number 1 said, I'm the COO at company. I've spent the last, I think it's now 7 years, scaling that business. When I joined, there were about 8 people, and now we're roughly 70. So it's been a very fun journey, interesting ride. And we are one of the few, probably, there are a few others, RegTech companies in Austria. We are specializing on KYB and business verification, so we're focusing on kind of the business part of compliance rather than individual identification. How do we do that? And that's where I might click. Yeah, it actually works. We spent a few years building a real-time network of connections to mainly commercial registers in order for our clients to be able to retrieve information on companies from primary sources, A, and in real time, B. This differentiates us from other information providers like Dun & Bradstreet or Thomson Reuters that you might know, because they have databases where they collate information from various sources, package it up, and then provide nice reports or output. We don't do that. We provide access to where the information lies. So it's really a living network of connections. Currently, we cover about 200 jurisdictions worldwide. That's about 115 million companies that can be looked up and where you can get whatever is filed in the register, so in the primary source. Why do we do that? We do that for the sake of providing audit-proof information for regulated entities, mainly financial institutions, but also others that have to, at a certain point in time, check whether a business exists or whether the person that claims that they have some signatory rights actually have that, who the shareholders might be, who the ultimate beneficial owner might be, and do that journey. That can be part of an onboarding, or it can be also part of kind of ongoing checks that are happening throughout kind of the customer relationship that our clients have with their customers. What else is there to say? We are a very diverse organization. Now, the Fintech Ladies, interesting to talk about that too. We have a quite equal split of females and males, which somehow happened not by design, but by itself. I've seen that there are quite a lot of females, especially in this compliance area. If you look at kind of financial industry in general, it's quite male-dominated, but compliance, there are a lot of females, interestingly, and we have people coming from that area, so that's how it probably worked. But proud to say that we also have female developers, so it's not just the kind of people from the business, but it's also a few of the more technical members of the team. We're also very international. People speak about 25 languages in total, so it's a fun mixture to work with. And yeah, we're growing the business on an ongoing basis. As you mentioned, we're now a Moody's Analytics company. We were acquired earlier this year and are integrating our services into the wider portfolio of compliance offerings that are available from Moody's. So what is RegTech? I'm going to try to speak a bit about what RegTech is, where it comes from, and where we think it will go. Basically, it's using technology to make life easier for people or entities that are regulated and that have to do certain steps as a result of that regulation in terms of compliance checks or anything else. Why do you use technology? Well, in order to make it easier, more efficient, in order to reduce risk, and also in order to reduce cost in many cases. Where does it come from, and how did RegTech occur? We think there were two influences. On the one hand, you have kind of the regulatory influence, and then on the other hand, you have the technological advancements. Where did the regulatory part come from? Basically, it comes from mistakes of the past, I would say. So we all know about the 2008 financial crisis and the things that led up to that. The result was that kind of the pendulum swung back a bit and more regulation was put into place, starting in the US and then followed in Europe by anti-money laundering directives and other regulation. Now, that resulted in the fact that kind of the burden that was put onto players in the financial market became higher, and there was kind of a search for ways to make life a bit easier. At the same time, there was quite a lot of development in the technical space, especially around artificial intelligence, which makes it easier to analyze data, but also overall in terms of digitizing and automating processes. These two things combined then led to others and companies like us developing tools and technologies in order to support compliance processes. What also helped was that, initially I think financial institutions were a bit concerned about using new tools and technologies to do the quite strict compliance tasks that they have to do in order to fill regulatory requirements. But there were investors out there, mainly coming from kind of fintech investments, that saw the opportunity and that started to invest into smaller companies that then got enough funding, enabling them to basically scale and also get to a level where banks, predominantly to start with, felt comfortable to use the services that were developed. That's a quick view of how investments have developed over the past year. So you can see in 2015, 149 deals were done, and about 1 billion was spent. And in 2019, that had already doubled in terms of cases, but multiplied by 8 in terms of the money that was spent for investments into the RegTech industry. The result is that there are a lot of RegTech companies out there. RegTech, as with fintech, it's a word for a lot of different things. It's not, companies doing the same thing, but it's a very fragmented market. So if you look at company with a K, for example, we focus on that bit where it is around the verification of businesses. So basically identification and verification and a bit around it. There are other people that do the same around individuals. There are companies that focus on workflows in order to make the whole compliance process more automated and efficient. There is obviously risk analysis being done. There are those that do transaction monitoring, third-party PEP sanctions checks. So the whole universe is quite wide when it comes to RegTech. And I always say there is a lot of competition ongoing because these are not all competitors. They, fit together quite well in some instances. And when you think about the future a bit there, if you are a consumer of RegTech, then looking at this might not be so great because there are a lot of different options. They're overlapping in many instances, so quite a few companies cover not only one bit, but a few bits and more on one side and less on the other side, and then you have the others that kind of overlap with that. So probably there will be some more development, but we get to that in a second. If we want to put what we saw before in numbers and think about why this market is interesting, there is a lot of spend going into compliance. So financial institutions spend approximately $270 billion each year for compliance work that they do. A lot of it is today staff, but more and more of it becomes technology too. That is topped by the number of fines or the amount of fines that banks have paid since 2008. It's about $300 billion, meaning it actually makes sense to spend on making the whole compliance sector more efficient and more risk controlling, because the fines will probably not go down, but rather go up. But maybe we hear something more about that later on. And today or this year, it's predicted that about 34% of that whole spending, so around $76 billion, will be spent on regulatory technology, meaning it's really a sizable market already. Now, where are we going? So it's actually the wrong slide, I see, but it doesn't matter. I do think that we have only started the journey. So a lot of banks have started to automate their processes. A lot of other companies are automating that process. We're not only looking at the pure financial industry, we're also looking at kind of supply chains where technology like RegTech in some instances is used. And overall, it's about 5%, I would say, of all steps that you can automate and digitalize that have been done so in the past. So there is still a lot of room there to grow the use of regulatory technology that is already here. What I also think is that the pandemic led to kind of a pickup in terms of speed of implementation, because what seemed difficult beforehand suddenly became a necessity. So if you think about, onboarding clients, that wasn't really possible in terms of meeting and exchanging documentation, but it had to be done in another way, which benefited RegTech companies like us, and also led to banks finding new ways of doing things. So previously, digitalization was on the agenda of everyone, but this gave it kind of an extra push. And we think that that will continue in the next few years. So a lot of projects have been started as a result of the pandemic and are now being executed. Not all of them are fast. Implementation timelines sometimes are up to 24 months or more. So what we're seeing now is kind of the start of the journey of using the technology that is already there. That being said, technology is obviously developing. There is a lot of innovation going on, and new things like blockchain-based services are particularly well placed for compliance, we believe, because the underlying technology gives you the possibility to create immutable records. So if we talk about blockchain, everyone thinks about cryptocurrencies, and that's obviously also an important point, because all the crypto companies out there are becoming more regulated, so they will need to use some tools to make sure that they're compliant. But if you think about just the underlying technology, what makes most sense is to use it for something where you need records that can't be altered. And that is exactly what compliance is about in many cases. You need to make sure that you can prove that you have checked something based on what, at what time, and for that you can use blockchain technology in a very productive manner. So that's one trend that we think will continue to develop and where innovation is happening. What we also see is that regulators are becoming more active and kind of speaking with different stakeholders when it comes to how the relationship between the regulated entities and the regulators could be made more efficient. So we think that kind of this meeting point will also result in wider use of tools that benefit both sides. And there, I think it's only starting now. There are a lot of activities, especially in the UK, a lot has happened, but also in Asia. Regulators have kind of actively pushed ahead and started to develop things together, do pilots and so on with other parties. So this whole kind of stakeholders coming together and creating something that is useful for all sides will develop the whole industry further. What we also think is, as you saw beforehand, there is this super crowded space of a lot of different companies doing a lot of different things. For those that ultimately use those technologies, that's not particularly helpful. So there will be a trend either into kind of this one solution for everything, or it needs to be altered in a way so that companies actually can do plug and play. Since a lot of the bits and pieces around compliance and regulatory technology are very specific, we do think that the plug and play model is what will eventually work out in the market. If you have, for example, companies that focus on kind of the workflow and the orchestration of compliance, and you have other companies that provide data that is required, these are two different things, and it's probably not likely that one company will be able to do all that is required in a perfect manner. So the assumption that the players of the industry will come a bit closer to each other and make sure that they're interoperable for the sake of the end user is most likely the path forward. We also see quite a lot of consolidation happening. We see larger participants buying smaller participants. We see mergers happening because of this fact that just providing one piece is usually not sufficient, especially if you have large banks as clients. And yeah, perpetual KYB, it says there, but I think kind of the perpetual bit around compliance is also something that is developing. In the past, you kind of had to do checks in the beginning of a relationship with someone, be it an entity or an individual, and then depending on risk categorization in between or at the end of a customer relationship. We think that this will develop quite quickly into a more ongoing update of data that is being held or checks that are being made. One example is the payment industry, where you have a lot of transactions. Maybe some of you are familiar with the fact that if you transfer larger sums from one country to another country, from one bank to another country to another bank, it can get stuck because there are compliance checks that have to be done. If you look at newer technologies that are trying to kind of optimize the speed and the efficiency of transactions, they will only work if kind of the surrounding compliance structure also becomes quicker. Because if you have a transaction that takes 2 seconds, but you have a compliance check that takes a week or a few days, then it doesn't really help that the transaction is really fast. So these things we also believe will result in the fact that more technology is being used in order to make those more simple and kind of easy to do checks automated and digitized. As we've seen in the past, there are always those cases where manual intervention is required. We often have conversations around, well, will you need a compliance manager in the future? We do think that you will most certainly need even more compliance managers in the future, but they will focus more on the higher value tasks. Today, a lot of things that are done is collecting information from various sources, analyzing it, putting it together in a consumable format, and creating records out of it. These are things that can quite easily be optimized and digitalized. So there, the trend is towards making sure that the low-hanging fruit can be made more efficient, and that the brain power and the manual intervention is focused on complex cases that can't be automated, which there always will be. In our example, if you look at kind of company information, you have trust structures, you have different levels of availability of information in different jurisdictions. So there are always steps that have to be taken outside of kind of the initial verification and the initial compliance checks. And for that, most likely the compliance managers will be needed in the near future and in the midterm future too. And I would say that's kind of our view in a nutshell. So if there are any questions, please feel free.
Thank you, Johanna, for this presentation. We actually do have a lot of questions on Slido. We don't have that much time. For information, if you had never used Slido before, you can, on the right side, there's the thumb. If you click on that, you can vote which question we ask first. We cannot ask them all, but afterwards, when we have the pen, we definitely will also introduce those questions. And yeah, we in the room we gave around a scan me, and just go on your phone, go on the camera, and then this will bring you directly to the Slido page. As we're not giving around the microphone, please also use the technology for that. So let's look into Slido. The question which has the most likes are, what is the future for RegTech and will the trend continue? I think you already got a little bit into that, but maybe you can summarize very shortly your view.
Yeah, definitely. I think the trend will continue because it has to continue due to market movements that we've seen in the past years, which kind of triggered the automation of many activities that have previously been done manually. It will also continue because there are a lot of new market players, fintechs, that have a digital model to start with and don't move from manual to digital processes, but build digital processes just from the outset. So they will be more prone to also using technology to do what they have to do. And the analytical capabilities are obviously getting better and better. We're looking and talking a lot about big data, and big data cannot be handled without technology. So there are a lot of factors that influence that.
Thank you for that. Next question. What are the biggest challenges for a small startup, like a company selling to a much larger customer?
Yeah, that's the biggest challenge, really. Selling to the larger customers. So kind of coming up with the product or the service is obviously also tricky, but then when it comes to sales, it's very difficult to kind of persuade a financial institution that has, I don't know how many compliance staff sitting in different parts of the world, that a small company is actually able to deliver what they had 200 people in India collect manually beforehand. So I think the way we took was that we did a lot of demonstrations. We had people just trial the service to make them see the efficiency gains. But it's not an easy route. I think all startups that sell to large organizations have the same issue. You don't have brand power, you don't have sales personnel, so you have to be inventive.
Thank you very much. I think let's go with one last question, very quick. Looking back from a startup joining a large organization, what would you have changed and kept?
Well, there are obviously needs that larger organizations have in terms of coordination and structure that smaller organizations don't have, because you just shout around the corner and say, please, let's do that, and then that's something that is possible. You can't do that when you have larger teams involved, where you have to get alignment, where everyone needs to know in which direction to go. I think we're in the midst of the integration phase. I worked for corporates beforehand, and I worked for different smaller entities. But what I think is most important is to have working communication, no matter if it's a small company or if it's a large company. Because if you don't have that in place, you can't progress things quickly, and in the end, you want to make sure that you have speed to market, really.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Johanna. We will hear again from you in the panel. I will now introduce our second speaker. We can now go into a different direction of RegTech. To be more specific, we go into legal tech. Very welcome, Janine Vukovic. She is head of legal, more specific head of legal governance and digitalization at the UniCredit Bank Austria. Very welcome. Janine is a specialist in everything law related. As she in banking, corporate, regulatory, and one of her topics she's focusing on is also empowerment of women. Thank you very much having you here, and yeah, we are looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you. Good evening from my side. My name is Janine Vukovic. I'm in the legal department of Bank Austria. I'm not an expert in all legal areas, but I gained a lot of experience in legal matters and topics related to banking secrecy, data protection, outsourcing. And since heading the unit legal governance and digitalization, I'm working very intensively and on a daily basis with all questions related to new digital and technical solutions. Enough about me. Let's jump immediately to the content of today's evening. I also try to start with a definition of what is legal tech and why do we need it. I think the definition itself is very different or means different things to different people in an area which is constantly growing and rapidly developing. My definition is legal tech is somehow the marriage of technology and legal regulations, and combine those two in order to find efficient and customized solutions which are legally and regulatory compliant and which helps us to stay competitive and to satisfy our customer needs. Especially in the banking area, legal tech or RegTech solutions tend to be cloud-based. This leads to increased efforts and increased risks, not only to cost efforts, but it's also very time-consuming in the preparation and in the implementation and the ongoing monitoring. It also leads to risks due to the increased legal requirements on a national and also on a European level. That's why I'd like to jump deeper into the topic of cloud solutions and outsourcing. As said, cloud solutions or cloud services are usually, not always, but usually to be classified as outsourcing and in most of the cases also as material or critical outsourcing. For us banks, this means that we need to consider particularly a specific section in the Austrian Banking Act which foresees very strict and very detailed requirements. In addition, also the EBA guidelines on outsourcing arrangements 2019. What I would like to point out that we have the obligation to notify material outsourcing to the FMA, which is also quite time consuming because we need to do that in advance. According to my experience, it should be at least 6 weeks before the signing of a contract, but I also suggest to get in close touch and informal communication and information with the regulators when planning a big outsourcing project, which is also cloud or technology based, in order to get regulators on board and prepare for specific questions or issues to be considered in such a project. My big suggestion and also wish in Bank Austria is to have legal and also DPO and data security experts onboarded from the very beginning in a project in order to be able to advise the negotiation of a contract from the beginning, but also the practical implementation of a technology or a technical solution which is cloud-based and which is maybe also an outsourcing. My personal view is that lawyers need to build up at least a basic know-how and knowledge in data security and technology areas, because how should we negotiate a contract and support and advise an outsourcing project or a technology project without having the specific know-how and without being able to negotiate the details with, for example, a big external provider on the market, maybe also on the US market. On the next slide, I summarize the outsourcing requirements from a legal and regulatory perspective, but I don't want to bother you with these details. The content specifications mainly relate to the areas of risk analysis, controls, ongoing monitoring, obligations. You need big and detailed outsourcing contract with a lot of mandatory requirements concluded. You need to keep an outsourcing register, etc., etc. What is more important, also interesting in that field, besides the topic outsourcing, is the incompatibility of GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, and the banking secrecy, which is a very strict requirement for Austrian credit institutions, with the so-called Cloud Act. The term cloud is a little bit misleading because it does not relate to cloud solution, but it says it means the Clarifying Lawful Overseas Use of Data Act, which has been adopted in the federal law on penalties and criminal proceedings in the US. And why this is somehow tricky, and also the umbrella of nearly all of our projects, which are cloud-based and US cloud-based, is the fact that this Cloud Act allows US authorities and enforcement authorities to request data from their cloud providers, no matter where their data are stored. This means that not only US providers which have their servers in US, but also US providers which have their locations or subsidiaries or servers within the territory of the European Union are in the focus of this Cloud Act. And as you can imagine, this is incompatible with the GDPR and the Austrian banking secrecy, because we need to protect the customer data to the best possible extent, and we need to protect also the possible access from US authorities. Therefore, it is really essential when having a new technology project, a new digital solution which is cloud-based and which has a focus on US cloud providers, to draw a tight net of technical and organizational measures. And that's why I said it's so important to build up also as a lawyer somehow a know-how and a basic knowledge in data security and those things. Because otherwise you will never ensure the legal and regulatory compliance with such a solution. The key measure is bring your own key. What is meant with that? In very simple terms, we try, when providing a cloud-based solution to our customers, to manage that the key for the cloud is in our own possession and is managed solely by us. This means that the data in the cloud are usually encrypted, are not stored in plain text, and you need a key to read the data on the cloud, and you need also the key to make them readable again. And if you manage to negotiate with your provider that this key is only under your management, the provider itself is not able to access customer data in plain text, and so are the authorities or US enforcement authorities not able to do that. So, sorry, multitasking. Okay, that's already the second part of my presentation. As said, as a lawyer, to summarize this first part, it's super important that you understand the need of your customers, the need of your the other teams in the bank. You need to understand the functionality you want to reach or you want to implement in order to be able to advise and implement a legally and regulatory compliant solution. I give you an example of legal tech. We in legal and together with compliance, we built up our own Lee.com, not a very creative name, I know that. It's called Lee.com, Legal and Compliance Management Tool or application, with the functionality that all our legal matters are stored there automatically. All our emails are stored and archived automatically and are put from our Outlook automatically in this tool. We also manage the external legal advice by external law firms about that. We manage our reportings within the group or to regulators about that tool. And this tool we have been implementing together with Microsoft, so a US provider, and it's web-based and cloud-based. So we were in the full focus of that US Cloud Act, as you can imagine, and we were, as lawyers and as the users of that legal tech solution in the situation, how to deal with that, how to take the risks that there is maybe the potential access to customer data of US authorities, of external providers, etc. And with the knowledge we have in my team about all this digital security and bring your own key and encryption technologies, we were able to introduce this bring your own key measure. But as said, it's very important to understand the functionalities of a cloud solution, because for this automatic email archiving, for example, you can't encrypt the data which are stored in the cloud itself, because this functionality needs to read the data of a mail in plain text to store it automatically. So you need to have the know-how how to encrypt the data on which level. We, for example, implemented then the encryption on device level. So we have a, it's very, I see your face. We implemented the encryption on device level. So we have the key in our own hands. We manage the key to get into the cloud solution itself on the cloud. We operate and process full data in plain text. This is an example of RegTech and how we implemented an in-house solution together with one of the big players on the market. So now coming already to the second part of my presentation, which is related to digital end-to-end process in the banking sector. For example, online account openings, online loans, etc., etc. The main legal questions and issues in this area of digitalization is the definition of the target group. For which customers do you want to offer a simple or pure online loan, for example, or a pure online account opening? We, for example, tried it in the first step for customers above 18 years and with Austrian citizenship. Then you need to define your type of product. Which online loan do you want to grant only on a pure digital way and with fully automated processes? The most relevant questions for us, particularly in the last 2 years when it was not able to see any customer in person, how to identify new customers or how to authentify already existing customers, which you cannot have in your branch. This was not something new, but it came up in the last 2 years because it was simply impossible, and the awareness and also the acceptance rate increased in the bank, but for sure also for the customers. And one example is that we implemented very fastly and also with the help of the regulators, which came up with quite simple, pragmatic solutions, the video legitimation. So we use an external provider. This is not an outsourcing because it's just a part of the obligations you have to do from a compliance point of view in the KYC area. We use an external provider who helps us due to video legitimation to identify or authentify our customers. And that helps very much in the whole process and has been accepted quite well by our customers. In the next steps, you need to think about how to provide all necessary documents to the customer and how can you achieve all documents you need from your customer when you don't have an online banking because it's a new customer you haven't already onboarded. So how to come to KYC documents, how to bring our general terms and conditions to the customer before signing a contract or entering into the customer relationship. And in this comes also the big question of digital signatures, right? We have in Austria this mobile signature, Handysignatur. I think the acceptance rate is quite low. And you also have some legal issues when accepting such a mobile signature because, as you might know, you only receive a digital signature with a name. But there's no other hint, like a birth date, like an address, or any other identification code, which helps you to identify a customer, which is maybe not Janine Wukowitz, but Franz Müller, for example. Yeah? And you also need to think about, am I allowed as bank to upload a loan agreement with all details on an A-Trust or any other external provider's homepage to put our digital signatures below that? We don't have any agreements with these providers, and we transmit a full loan agreement or any other customer detailed information sheet to an external provider just to put our qualified electronic signature on the paper. So is this already a violation of banking secrecy or data secrecy? These questions came up and they are also not yet solved. But I think we moved ahead quite good, quite well, and also quite fast in the last 2 years, but we are still not at the end of the journey. And what is super important when advising such topics or projects is the timeline. So we had to think about a lot when and which documents in which order to provide to the customer or to request from a customer on which communication channel. At least before a business transaction is concluded when you don't know your customer. Another interesting example which we implemented in the last 2 years are chatbots or voice bots, for example. The main legal questions are, which content do we want to work with, a chatbot or a voice bot? Shall customer data be effective? If not, it's quite simple. If you ask only very generic questions to a chatbot or a voice bot, just like, where can I find the next Bank Austria branch, or how are they opening hours? That's quite easy, right? But if you are including personal customer data, just like a small part of the process in the authentication process or the identification process, it gets more complicated. And if you then also adding questions including business data, for example, shall a customer be able to ask a chatbot or a voice bot, how is my account status or balance? It gets even more complex. In this context, you need to define on which internal platforms or applications such a bot shall be integrated on. If you're just integrating on the public homepage, which we did, you can only work with generic questions because this is not a secure environment from a data secrecy point of view. If you're inventing it in the hotline or service line, for example, in inbound calls, you can also work with personal customer data questions and use it for the authentication process in a hotline, for example. And the third use case is integrating it into the online channel. That's a secure environment because it's our own in-house environment. And you can work also with detailed business content and personal content the customer can ask for and can help. And as said, often these chatbots and voice bots, if provided by an external provider, are often cloud-based. And then we are also in the journey began from the beginning, and you need to think about all the cloud related questions and issues we already discussed before. So this was my presentation. Are there any questions?
Thank you very much, Janine. There are indeed questions on Slido. I will pick the most popular ones again. How did RegTech, or legal tech in this case, change the financial sector so far, especially in the last 2 years? And where are we in 5 to 10 years? It's a long question. I think you could talk one evening about that, but in short.
In short, the last 2 years helped a lot because we, the bank, but also the customers and also the regulators implemented or accepted a lot of things in a digital way, which would have been also possible before, but were either not implemented or not accepted. So COVID-19 had huge advantages in that and changed the situation quite rapidly. And going on with an outlook in the future, I do not think that we won't need banks in 5 to 10 years, and I also do not think that we won't have any branches. Because what I can see and what I hear from my colleagues, from my business colleagues, is that there are certain businesses and certain products a client just wants to have digital and a pure digital way, but there are certain services, in particular advisory services, which are accepted also by younger customers only in a personal meeting and personally in a visit in a branch. So I think for sure legal tech and RegTech will evolve. It is a must. It is also very important to stay competitive. But we will also have physical branches and physical customer meetings in the future.
Thank you. Can you share your experience from a practical perspective when joining the digitalization projects on your journey?
Yes. I mean, it's a very generic question. As said, it's super important to be involved from the beginning. to advise on different areas, on I don't know, different questions from the beginning, and to find pragmatic solutions which are legally and regulatory possible and which helps to implement such a digital solution. Yeah. And the most important thing I already mentioned in my presentation is that as a lawyer, you need to build up also a specific technical know-how in data security, etc., when you are advising such projects.
Thank you. And a short one, last one, legal tech. How has its importance within the company banks developed over the years?
It has developed a lot, but not that fast as other regulatory tech solutions on the market has developed, at least to my opinion. Maybe that's the reason is that lawyers are more conservative in that approach, I don't know. But we are quite at the beginning of our journey with our legal tech solution, and I'm quite critical because we have a lot of bugs yet to be fixed, etc. But when talking to other legal departments or external law firms, I hear that we are far, far behind them, although our solution is somehow the beginning of the journey. So I think in the legal tech area, the growth has not been that fast, and there is a lot to come in the future.
Thank you very much, Janine. And you will be back at our panel. So thank you for now. And we're coming to our third speaker. Our third speaker is Cécile Berbutz. She is from the Financial Market Authority, from the FMA, and for all who know me, that's where my journey started. So I'm really, really glad we have you here. We hear the subtech area of the RegTech topic and the regulation perspective. Yeah, Cécile has been with the FMA since 2006, and since 2015 she is, and I have to read this because it's a long title. She's Deputy Head of Division Integrated Conduct Supervision of Banks.
Perfect.
So very, very welcome. She is also a representative internationally wise at ESMA for the Financial Market Authority, and I'm glad you're here and looking forward to your presentation. Thank you, Cécile.
Thank you so much, Johanna. Thank you for your kind words, Johanna. It is my pleasure to present to you the closing views on the topic we are discussing today and sharing with you some thoughts on RegTech and subtech from a regulator's point of view. We've heard already a little bit about this. Now, my field of expertise behind this very complicated title is Operative Conduct Supervision of Banks. Oh, I think this is the wrong way. There we are. You can read it. Let's let it sink in. Yes, my field of expertise is operative conduct supervision of banks. My division monitors the selling and marketing of securities, insurance products, and banking products like credits, consumer credits, mortgage credits. And the regulation of these themes is cross-sectoral. We have the MiFID and the IDD, which are the gold standards, as we like to call it. And the FMA's approach is an integrated one. They've created, with my division, a one-stop shop for on-site and off-site inspections in this field. Now, the output of conduct supervision is consumer and investor protection, but it's also closely related with prudential, so the financial stability of the banks, because we've heard it in Johanna speak, when conduct risk hit, they hit hard and cost a lot. It's no wonder, therefore, that the word compliance was introduced in 2007 within Austrian capital market regulation when implementing MiFID. And in the course of the past 2 years, I've had the great opportunity to help develop some very innovative subtech tools with my division, which I would love to share with you in a minute. But before, let's take a little bit broader perspective. Now, the regulatory requirements placed on market participants, we've heard it, have increased greatly over the past 10 years. And while some of them were in response to market failures and the global financial crisis, others also reflect the increasing complexity of financial products and global financial services. And the failure to comply with regulations has significant consequences, and this had led to firms spending a lot of money on compliance and risk management programs. At the same time, there was a drop in cost for data storage and computing power, and this was a catalyst for tools specifically in the area of artificial intelligence and machine learning. Now, RegTech does not stop at the doors of a regulator. So competent authorities like FMA also make use of technologies to ease our work and to handle data, and this use of technologies by supervisors is called subtech. The evolution of the FMA's toolset has been a large one over the past years. We've started, I think we were very early adapters, also if you look in a European context. And I want to mention just a few examples. There is our incoming platform, which is a web-based platform which permits the electronic transmission of documents of supervised entities to the Financial Market Authority, and then is distributed in a very easy, electronic, transparent way to the responsible units, and it is also connected with our electronic filing system. Also early on, our market surveillance teams have developed an alert surveillance tool, which was at the time really unique in Europe. In prudential supervision, we have a lot of reporting data by banks, by insurance companies, by investment firms, by pension funds, and these tremendous amounts of data had to be handled, and we are developing more and more data cubes, one very important one developed by the Austrian National Bank. Now, the FMA strongly commits to data-driven supervision, but this requires easy accessibility to data and to big data for day-to-day supervision. We have participated in a project, Horizon 2020, with the Vienna University of Economics and Business, and this allowed us to cooperate closely with very bright students, and some of us then joined us in a trainee program, and this is a bit my personal journey here, helped us develop two tools which are also quite unique in Europe, as we heard. And these two use cases I want to briefly share with you. The first one is our FMA PRIP kit tool. Now, for those of you who don't know what a PRIP is, it's a package, so I always have to read it, packaged retail and insurance-based investment product. So it's a financial instrument which is structured in a way that is not very easy to understand, and this is why the European Union has said, well, we need a standardized document, only 3 pages, all having the same information, so it's a very structured document, and the contents are regulated. Cannot be longer than 3 pages, and they are not notified to FMA on forehand, so we don't approve these PRIP kits, but it's one of the information a credit institution or an insurance company has to give to its customers. So we have to supervise whether information by banks is fair and not misleading. So what do we do with this huge amount of PRIP kits? Austrian credit institution publish 6,000 to 10,000 PRIP kits a day. And in my division, we are 15 people. So this is where our subtech tools come in. We have developed together with the students from the university and then incorporated it into our systems, a web crawler, which is semi-automatic. We tell him where to go, and then he downloads on particular days all the PRIP kits published from that issuer's website on that day. Then it is transformed, the PDFs, because they are all in PDF form, are transformed in text, and then, in my opinion, there is an algo running over it, and at the end of this process I have a semi-automatic report showing me if there are failures in some kits, if there are texts missing, if there are required information missing. It is flagged on the one hand, so these can then afterwards persons, by my, my colleagues in my department, can be addressed. Why is that? Is it a small failure? Is it a big failure? We then go to the banks and say, well, we've looked at this, please look at your systems. So it's a way for us to supervise this on the one hand, and on the other hand, the analysis of the relationships and the trends within the PRIP kits are also automatically analyzed and then transformed in a PRIP market report. We can now do twice a year. And we were very early with this innovative tool in Europe, and we're presenting it to other NCAs who are interested in it, I think. And it was a very, very exciting journey and helped us a lot. The same is for our second use case I wanted to share with you. It's our Conduct app. As I said, I am in conduct supervision, and we have a lot of data also coming from prudential supervision, from the Vera V Meldung and reporting by banks. And we had to ask our colleagues in the National Bank, can we have these data? And then we are sending ourselves a survey to the banks yearly with data relevant for us. And we had like it felt like 50 Excels different, and we didn't know. Yes, we did know what to do. We used the one for analysis X and the other for analysis X. And when we saw how easy things went with the subtext solution on the PRIP kits, we got greedy, and the students stayed in our department, and we've developed together our Conduct app in our studio. And so now all the relevant data we need for day-to-day supervision are in one app, and then there is a shiny app on top of that, which makes it for the end user really on one click. I have all the relevant information I want, and not only do I have that, it enables time series, it enables us to make a PDF document of it, and so my supervisors who go in on-site inspection can take it with them. They don't have to be online all the time, but have all the information they need at a glance. And so we have the key conduct information on each credit institution. We have a visualization of the developments in the timelines. Our risk scoring we do as a risk-based supervisor also is now easygoing. We don't have to ask IT to reinvent an algo each year. We have it all in our hands, and all on the basis of this conduct database. And as an add-on, we can also now have a macro view of the data we have, because the analysis running over it, just like we did for the PRIPS market report, we have now an integrated banking report with all these data, providing us a view on where markets are going. And this year, for the first time, we have published it on our website. So if you're interested, just take a look at FMA's website. And we found stuff we wouldn't have found before, that there was, for example, an enormous increase in the number of customers of Austrian Bank overall. So this was a very exciting journey. And out of this experience, of course, the risks which go with RegTech can be felt better than if you only read it in reports. And the risk we have found, we've heard some of them today. You can also find it in all of the reports the European authorities makes, are the risk resulting to the product risks. What when the algo is bad? We have the issue of black box algorithms. The final responsibility lies, of course, with the management who has bought or outsourced the RegTech solution. And now this is also something which can be a risk for the supervised entity. We have the risk of cyber resilience. We have the concentration risk that there are too few providers who offer solutions. We have risk related to the data themselves. One of the key sentences I learned working with data scientists was shit in, shit out. So this is also a very big risk, what I've learned from a personal experience. There are the cost risks, of course, lack of competence, what when your data scientist goes away, or what when you can't handle the tool anymore, or you can't update it. In our case, we also have to be sure that all these data persons stay at our authority, or that we keep up with our knowledge ourselves. And FMA's mantra in this regard, so regarding this risk, is the mantra of a technological neutral approach. Now, what does this mean? It's about achieving the right balance between facilitating innovation, scalability, and competition, while continuing to achieve the central regulatory objectives of consumer protection, prudential resilience, market integrity, and ultimately, finally, financial stability. So, technological neutrality principle means that the use of a specific technology should not be prevented or preferred or prejudiced, and they should not be prevented at the same time because of the regulatory or supervisory approach. Now, what are FMA's actions in this regard? We closely monitor the market, and we have done 2 very large studies, the FMA digitalization studies. The first was published in 2018, and the second we did in 2021. And the results of the call for input by market participants have just been published a few weeks ago. We try to do what we try to do with these studies is help us to identify the concentration risks, the potential channels of contagion, to intensify the monitoring of cyber risks, and to identify and analyze trends and the drivers of digitalization. We also have at FMA a fintech point of contact, and I checked with my colleagues there, but there are very few questions from market participants on RegTech issues. The questions asked there are more in a sandbox and what is allowed and what is not allowed point of view. Now, to close our overview of RegTech and SubTech, FMA is, of course, embedded in a bigger system of European regulators and institutions. And RegTech and SubTechs are key in almost every financial strategy paper by these institutions. I have cut out a few of the most important ones. There is the European Commission, who published its digital finance strategy in 2020. It wants to promote innovative IT tools to facilitate reporting and supervision. All ESA, so all European supervisory authorities, are required to have a financial innovation standing committee, and these committees monitor the different markets and are a place of sharing thoughts between the NCA, so the national competent authorities. And a very big report, which, if you are interested in RegTech and SubTech by banks, has been published last year in June by the EBA, which is the European Banking Authority. And this is an analysis of RegTech in the EU financial sector, and very easy to read and gives all the main points in this regard. But also the ECB, the European Central Bank, and the SSM, the Single Supervisory Mechanism, having their steering committees. They are conducting health tests at the moment of all ECB's subject programs, and they also have their own RegTech initiative, such as also the FATF in the field of anti-money laundering. Now, with this overview, I come to an end of my presentation, and let me conclude by saying, by using the words of EBA in its financial strategy, from a regulator's point of view, a balanced approach is needed to acknowledge RegTech benefits and to create an innovative, supportive environment, while at the same time closely monitor and be prepared to manage any associated risks. So with this, I am to an end. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Cecile. Let's dive straight into it. How much time did the implementation of the PRIP-Kit toolkit take? Mm-hmm. And is there machine learning in place?
There's no machine learning in place yet, because we don't do any in-depth analysis of the PRIP kits, because since we don't approve them, we don't have to take responsibility for that they are correct, so we don't calculate everything. So we thought we didn't need machine learning here. And the development took, I would say, half a year until 1 year, until everything was really like putting on pushing a button and then having my report ready. So I think it was approximately a year. It was developed by a young woman, which we are very proud of.
Very nice, thank you. And what does RegTech mean for regulators?
Well, we supervise, of course, indirectly the RegTech solutions implemented in the supervised authorities, in the supervised entities. So if we do an on-site inspection on compliance, we see a lot of RegTech tools. We have our opinions on it, but for us, the addressee of the inspection is the bank itself. So we see them. If the results are good, we have no problems with them. We also check whether the handling between the outsourcing company and the outsourced company, the due diligence checks are made, how the reliance is. We have, of course, a big business continuity theme also in this regard. So from various angles, we are confronted with RegTech. And when we use it ourselves, then we have subtech. And we have more the approach of in-house tool developments than of buying RegTech solutions. Maybe something we can also discuss further on. But that does RegTech kind of mean for us.
Thank you, Cecile, for this insight. I would like now to... Actually, you already can take a seat at the stage, so stay with me.
Yes, I will.
I would also like to ask Johanna and Janine on stage, and I would welcome Natalie back. We're now heading to our panel, and yeah, enjoy our panel. Natalie.
So, thank you so much, Johanna, also for guiding us through this journey. So, what I would like to do with all of you now, because we had various different viewpoints, the RegTech view, the bank and legal view, then we had the SupTech and the regulatory view. So I would like us to connect the dots together. Yeah? So you are all mentioning different applications, especially the two of you, that you were developing in-house. So what I would like to know is the innovation. You were mentioning, Cecile, we need to create an innovative environment. So how can we do that? How can you internally create an innovative environment? And then maybe also even you, Johanna, how can you remain innovative even as a RegTech company? Who wants to start? Cecile, your innovative environment. How did you manage and what could you still do to develop even more of these solutions?
Well, in our personal journey, it was luck and a bit of courage and a bit of looking above the edges you're normally framed within. There was this call when the Horizon 2020 project started, who needs something? We could apply machine learning and do something. And nobody really reacted. And I said, well, that's too bad because there is money and there are students coming. And so we started to think a little bit. And then I came up with the idea of all these prep kits. It was new, and how are we going to handle that? And so I thought, well, if a machine could read that and find some things. So we put it on paper and send it to the call. And nobody else was interested. And then we were thinking, oh, this is going to be complicated. But then it was like a blooming island, we like to call it. Things started to be so attractive, and we could even do more and more. And then the students came to work for us, and there was this drive of, hey, there are so many possibilities we wouldn't have thought of in the first place. And then we really became greedy and started to develop more and more, which was certainly luck that all the players worked so well together. And now we have the thing, can we keep these students? Do we have enough resources for it? What is with our IT? Does it fit in with other programs we have? So it's not an easy journey, I would say, but a very productive one. And we made examples also. So I think what you need is to be open-minded and have a little bit of courage.
Can I just follow up? So you worked with a university, so you joined, okay. So you brought in students who also helped you to then think through ideas.
It was a program financed by the European Union, and we had some professors teaching us about artificial intelligence and machine learning. And we, on the other hand, so within this project, we taught the students of the role of FMA, what we are doing, and then for our project, we had to explain them PRIPS and the PRIPS regulation, what we are doing. So we had some seminars, some workshops together, and the students then within their university project had their credits for developing it, and the traineeship was also financed by the European Union, and so they could put it into place directly at our authority, and it was really a match made in heaven.
So bringing in some external views to create some internal innovation, and then managing this innovation, continue to manage it.
Yeah.
Anything, Johanna, from your side? I mean, you had to be innovative to start your journey even, and then how do you keep innovative?
Well, I think it always depends on...
We hear you, but the tech colleagues have to check whether online. Yes.
I think it always depends on what kind of innovation you're looking at. There is kind of incremental innovation, and then there's groundbreaking innovation. If you talk about incremental innovation, I think it's very important to listen to the market, and not to listen to what potential customers say they need now, but to talk with them and listen between the lines, and understand, what issues there are that are not solved yet. So that's one thing. Then innovation is very seldomly a linear process. So managing innovation too much, I think, is rather detrimental for coming up with innovation. If you look at startups and kind of what they set out to do, many of them end up doing something completely different. So it's not that you can say, I'm not going to go and innovate and do this, but typically you kind of evolve along the way. So putting too much structure around innovation doesn't work very well in most cases.
So remaining open to new ideas and not always strangling it with structure.
Exactly, that's the short summary, I would say.
And then from a banking perspective, you also mentioned, Janine, it's still growing. It's still at the beginning. So what could you do to foster this?
We, as said, we implemented certain end-to-end processes, and we did it in the way of end-to-end rooms, so-called end-to-end rooms, where we brought all different people from all areas together on one table. And that's super important to have an agile team without a dedicated project manager and I don't know, project portfolio with who is responsible for what, but bring the people together. We worked also with the University of Vienna of Economics and Law, and brought some students on the table, some data analysis, some IT engineers, some coders, and we asked also a lot of business people who are really in the branch and directly working with customers, what is needed and how shall the end product look like. And then sitting together, which is time consuming at the beginning and which can also be complex and a little bit frustrating, is the advantage is to sit together a few hours and bring all the ideas on the table and then sort out how to come to the end product that is needed for the customer. And then you can go in subgroups and sub-project teams where you work together with the people you need from a compliance point of view, from data protection point of view, IT point of view, etc. But it worked quite well to start with the so-called end-to-end rooms and bring all relevant people together on one table.
I like this idea. End-to-end rooms bring different people together from different areas and not always work in silos to create some creativity. Yes, Cecilia?
May I add something to that? Because that was also one of my our lessons learned, that it was a bottom-up process. Not so much for the PripKids tool, because it was not so complicated what we wanted, but for the Conduct app and for our Shiny project, our data analysis, which was part of our division, which is not so common, but we had this chance with the university. And then we asked every single supervisor in my team, what would you need? What would you like? And so and then it really blossomed. So I think this idea of involving a lot of people at the beginning of such a product, so to really make it the data accessible and easily accessible and for their needs, so custom fit, was something which worked very well for us too.
So now I would like to still touch upon external RegTech, because we heard about it a lot, but we were going like loops a little bit. So let's go maybe a bit deeper. I mean, Johanna, you told us about that you still see RegTech has to grow. There's still potential, and there's some interesting use cases. Do you have some in mind maybe that have triggered still your interest? And which ones do you think, or why is it difficult for regulators or banks to maybe apply these external RegTech?
I think there are a lot of use cases. I mean, there are some that are closer to our hearts, obviously, which are around KYB and kind of business verification. But looking at that space, if you're a business customer and you come to a bank, you are onboarded. And then you might eventually need another product and you talk with another party in the bank. Then you have to deliver the same thing one more time. So I think there are a lot of optimization potentials around process. You know, we see developments where kind of data repositories are built that are being accessed by different groups within an entity. I think there things will happen. And then what is particularly important to us is that, you know, hoarding data and using it over a long time is something that doesn't really work well when it comes to compliance. So I think getting people and businesses to use more real-time applications, not to store data, but to get to the bits and pieces they need in the moment, is something that will develop in the next few years to a higher extent too.
Maybe to add from a banking
Please,
perspective, what I observe is that for sure we need to rely on external providers. That's super important for us because we are a credit institution but not an IT provider. But what we are often struggling with, which is time consuming and also costly, is the topic interfaces. Because there are a lot of external solutions which are super, which would perfectly suit for us and which are super good to help us and to address the needs to be compliant and regulatory and legally compliant. But we need the interfaces to our own IT environment, and the partly solution, which is a RegTech solution from the market, needs to be integrated in our process. And that's what we are often struggling with external providers, because on a standalone basis, the RegTech solution is a good one, but how can we integrate it in the process and in our IT environment to be able to use it in a bank of our size, with a lot of people and with a lot of departments?
Integration burden. I mean, this would be interesting how you see it, Cecile. And then maybe, Johanna, do you have any advice on how to overcome this integration burden? No? But maybe first you, Cecile.
Yeah.
How do you feel about external providers, and do you have the same challenge of an integration burden?
As for our supervisory authority with external providers, we don't have a lot of experience with it. We have increased also our IT knowledge within the FMA, because I think we like to be dependent a lot, and we have very sensible data, so I don't see a big market for subtech solutions created by external providers. And when we supervise RegTech solutions, as I said before, we are interested in the output of these solutions and that they are resilient, and that the outsource company delivers also for us, so that we can go there and look at things. So this is very particular for outsourcing. So for a regulator, the RegTech solutions we see in our supervised entities are something we monitor, we look closely into, but we are dealing further on with the banks, which the remaining responsibility lies within the supervised entity. So it's my...
from the outside-in view, Johanna, the
The
challenge of
outside-
integration.
Yeah, I can sympathize with what you say because what we're seeing when we work with kind of larger, more traditional banks is that they have a lot of issues with their legacy systems. So it's not that much about kind of the RegTech providers not having the interfaces that you typically would expect. Like we, for example, have an API that you can connect to within a day or so. It more depends on what systems are in-house, and what we often see is that they have grown historically. They're kind of monsters that no one really understands. Implementation cycles are, once a quarter. There is a backlog of 10 projects that have to be implemented. So the challenge there, I think, lies within the fact that you're dealing with history that is not fit for purpose when it comes to implementing more agile technology that is available out in the market. Now, that also goes back to the point I made in the beginning. Is it going to be, one solution for everything, or is it going to be plug and play? I think it's going to be plug and play, but I think that the legacy world has to develop into a way where plug and play is possible, which will certainly take time, but will be driven by competition there too, because if you look at fintechs, they have new systems where they basically can connect whatever is out there. They don't build a lot themselves, they just buy whatever is needed. And that, in the end also improves end customer experience. So I think the more traditional players in the market will be forced to move a bit faster.
No, I think we could, for at least an hour, discuss more. I can already have hundreds of questions and also here. But what makes our events, I think, a bit special is that we talk about business, but then we also bring it down to the personal. And that's what I still want to do a little bit in this round, and that's why I'm running a few minutes over, is that you maybe can share still your journey, your personal journey. What brought you to this area? What interested you in this area? And why would you maybe foster other young talents, women, but not only, to join this area? So a bit of a personal view. Who of you would like to start? Maybe in the middle, Janine, because usually we start with the right or the left.
Sure. Yeah, as said, I started already during my studies unexpectedly in a bank. If you have asked me 10 years before, where will you work in the future, I think I would not have answered in the bank. I'm still there. So I started as a trainee during my studies in the legal area, and then I became an expert in some legal areas, and that's what's important to me still today. So I'm now in a managing role since 4 years, and I've been given the chance very fast. And also as one of the youngest women in Bank Austria, I was 27 when I was head of unit, and I have now a team with, I think, 20 people or even more. So I'm super happy about that, and I love being a manager, but in parallel I also love being an expert, and I think it's super important to still be an expert in whatever area or field you're interested in. I was always very open-minded, and I was not shy to learn new things and to develop constantly. I was very interested in different topics, and I was never shy to speak up and to raise my voice and to ask to be allowed to present myself and not my boss present the results or my ideas. And I think you need to be an expert, you need to build up certain know-how in order to do that, and then you should just speak up and show that you're good at what you're doing. Even as a woman, I think this is especially a topic women often have, that they hide behind their managers or within their team. But also as women or young women, we should be proud of what we're doing and of what we are, and we should just simply stand up and raise our voices.
So I hear from it getting also the chance, so basically also leadership supporting and giving the chance also to young talents or maybe new voices, and then taking the chance when you receive it, right?
Yeah, and be patient with yourself, because it's simple steps and the short steps you're taking in that one big success, which makes you putting in a management role, but it's just step by step and the very small successes which count and which you should be proud of.
Thank you so much. And then maybe Cecile, your journey. What brought you to the FMA? Why are you still there? How can we bring others in?
Like Janine said, if somebody told me when I studied law that I would end up in Financial Market Authority, I would never believed it. It was more of a coincidence, as is my entire journey. I was born in the Netherlands. I've studied in Belgium. I came with Erasmus to Vienna. For 4 months, but it has been more than 20 years now. And not because I planned it, but because there were, I always like to compare it with, there were trains coming by and I hopped on some of them, and then when I liked it, I stayed, and when I didn't like it, I hopped off and took the next one. And for me, I think that's the main key to my success, is to be open-minded and be able to adapt yourself to new situations. And if you're interested and think new things are exciting, then just hop on. And if it doesn't work out, then you hop off again. And as long as you are challenged in what you are doing, and if you like what you're doing, and that is one of why do I stay so long at FMA. It's a very dynamic environment. And I've seen 3 departments now, and I'm being a deputy head for 7 years, but my work days have never been the same. And the fact that we could develop these subject tools was a coincidence, but also oh, well, that's new, let's look at it, let's see if it works. And in these cases it works, but 10 other projects didn't work. And that's also okay. You have to stand to that, and then, well, if that doesn't work, then the next thing will do so, and you've learned from your mistakes there. And yeah, have faith in yourself, keep an open mind, and just do it.
Adapt and jump on the train.
Yeah.
I like this. And then, Johanna, what brought you to company? Because you were in other companies with a C before, right? What has brought you on the journey?
Happened by accident, I would say. I had returned from the UK. I lived a few years in the UK and in Turkey and in Germany, and then eventually ended up again in Vienna, where I had been before, and met an old study colleague. And I had just gotten my second child and had finished a project. And he said, well, actually, we could need some help. Can't you just come and do a bit of consulting? And that's how that chapter of my career started. I mean, overall, I understand what you said with the train. I'm always very impressed by people who say, oh, this is what I want to do, and this is where I want to be in 5 years, and this is where I want to be in 10 years. I've never had that in my whole life. I've always just gone where something interesting to do lies open, and where you can learn new things. Bit of a kind of new junkie there, but I think if you kind of do what is interesting, then that's how you develop. You don't necessarily need a super sophisticated plan for it. What I do think is you can search out environments that are, interesting, challenging. So for me, the startup and scale-up phase was very interesting. There are also similar situations in large corporations where, something new is built. It doesn't need to be a smaller entity for that sake. And you can also look at being in a setting that is more international, because you will have more diversity. You can look at being in a setting where you have techie people come together with more commercial background people, and all these things then form a mixture that is helpful for development, I think.
So you already touched upon, the bit of a structure on how to foster this also personal development. I would like to wrap it up, and I'm sure not the ones online, but at least the ones that are here can then also chat with you about all these personal and also RegTech topics for the networking. But to wrap it up, to conclude with diversity and inclusion, if you can share with us, there's a lot of measures, a lot of ideas, but maybe one idea that you would have. We heard compliance has a lot of diversity already. but is there still something either from compliance and legal where you see a lot of diversity, or something that you would wish, so one idea that could foster diversity and inclusion? I think everyone has to breathe for a second, think about it.
It's a big question.
One idea, one topic, how to foster diversity and inclusion.
I think, the pandemic was actually quite helpful in terms of fostering diversity and inclusion, because it suddenly became quite normal that you had to interrupt your days by doing homeschooling or something similarly exotic, and you had people sitting in front of video calls with cats jumping around and kids screaming. So kind of the world seems to have become a bit more open when it comes to structuring activities in a slightly different way than before. So some things kind of happen by external factors, but in terms of doing something proactively, I think it's important, and diversity is not just males,
Exactly.
females.
That's why I didn't touch only this
exactly.
one. Yes.
It's about bringing different opinions together and bringing different backgrounds together. And there, as with many other things, communication is crucial. People have to listen to each other. People have to listen to other opinions. One has to see the value coming out of not thinking just in one direction and everyone going in that direction, but taking into account different views and different mindsets in order to create something that is better.
Janine, your one idea. Johanna had two.
About 10.
You one idea how to foster diversity.
Yeah, I'm very much into empowerment of women and into the gender awareness topic. So a lot of measures there, but I think we are still in a situation where women often think they need to decide between job or career and family, and this should not be even idea in their head. There should not be this choice between this or that. And this new working environment with these flexible hours and working anywhere from any time helps a lot. But I think it's very important, and that's what we do in Bank Austria very well, to implement concrete measures to increase the level of women in different levels, on talents, on experts field, on management level. So it is still the duty of an employer to implement concrete measures to foster the female generation.
So focused on concrete measures.
Yeah.
And then Cecile, your one
Yeah, well,
idea?
I don't have so many ideas left, but my wish for diversity is bigger than maybe not the measures, but the reality is. And I think our team has benefited a lot from different generations, the experience of the experienced supervisors, and then this drive and this potential of young students or persons coming from university. So the diversity within the team here really worked a lot. We have more women than men. We only have 2 left in a division of 15.
Also not good, the other way around?
No, not at all. Not at all, but no. I mean, we need diversity.
Yeah.
But the wish for diversity, you can't always have it like that. When we're hiring, it's not that we have the choice between 100 people desperate to work with us. So the market of finding good people is very difficult at the moment, we see. So even if we'd want to have more men in our case, or younger people, it's not that easy. But everything my 4 speakers have said, I can only confirm. It's being open-minded, it's empowering, it's enabling young people to foster their talents and to make them bloom, and then the diversity of the team. It's scientifically proven that they work better than non-diverse teams.
And I also like the idea of age diversity.
Mm-hmm.
That's also
Very
something
important.
huh?
Yep.
And with this, as I said, we could continue on. I have a lot of different questions, but I think we need to wrap it up. So thank you so much for your ideas. And in order to really wrap it up, I would like to also still bring Johanna once more with me on the stage. So please stay, don't run away, so that we still have you here. But I would maybe say, Johanna, maybe a few thoughts from us. What did we hear about today? We only started the journey of RegTech. It is still something where we can really grow. We heard about that there is consolidation. So it will be interesting how much innovation can actually be fostered by consolidation, or is this something that might slow down consolidation? We will see what the future will bring. We also heard about external innovation brought in. So RegTech external, but then also internal developments of tools and innovation. And we heard about a balanced approach. So being innovative while still looking at the risks that also RegTech has to deal with, because it's a complicated area, compliance and legal. And with that, I would like to wrap up. And I think you, Johanna, still have a few words from us.
Thank you, Natalie, and thank you for this great summary. Nothing to add from my side in regards to topic. Only a few thank yous in the end. First of all, big thank you to our 3 speakers. Thank you very much for joining us here. A big thank you to Vienna Business Agency. You heard Alex at the beginning, for the cooperation we have every year. Also Bankenverband, Stefan Bunkel, thank you very much. It's a pleasure every year. Also company who has organized with us this event. Thank you, Paul Foster, for helping us with the organization and also offering some drinks and nibbles. Now, I would like to now say goodbye to our online audience. We ran a little bit over. I hope that was okay. I think it was very interesting and we could have going on, and that's what we're going to do here. So thank you very much online. We here in the room, I hope you all stay here. We now do what the Fintech Ladies usually do. We have organized some networking, and I hope you have now picked up some topics. You can now talk to also to our speakers and to me and to Natalie. Thank you very much that you have joined us at this hot day, and yeah, see you at the bar. Thank you very much.